Welcome, everybody. Today, I'm quite high up in the Himalayas, and it feels really good to maybe speak of this today. And I didn't know a video was coming so soon about this, but this is a theme that really pertains to so many of us. And I think we're on to something globally with this. So I don't mean that we're ahead. It's actually very much about the opposite. A lot of what you're going to see on this channel is about this concept of group field work, the horizontal, the synarchic, this more deeply telepathic way that's not so vertically organized. And I'm not saying that we don't need authority, we don't need leadership in many departments, but we cannot have just singular directional energy that actually stifles the spiritual essence of who we are. Okay. And today I woke up feeling a lot of things moving through me, and it's all quite poised for a course that we're running at the moment because we're going to be examining this soon. But also, yesterday evening, some discussions with some elders on a thread that we use sometimes was talking about what's going on right now in the Middle East. And a lot of these elders have lived through war pretty much all their lives. And they have this very sensitive radar to when something's really the right time because they've seen it before. Okay. And I will be introducing these elders more formally to you soon, but I want to get their permissions. I'm not going to speak of people's names right now, especially as some of the things are still sensitive for people. So I'm just going to speak of this as something that's quite unified within the group we're talking to. And it lines with something else that we're talking about. So they were saying that actually, right now, when I'm making this, there's quite a lot going on with Iran, Israel, the Middle East countries, Saudi countries. And one of these elders who's really into the elegant flow of things, who holds that real grandmother speed and rhythm, which is true natural law, really, it's not pushing things. She said, I really feel change is coming. I really feel it's coming. And I've been speaking to my grandson who's 25. He feels it. Everybody's saying the same thing. And she said, where we are, the way everything expresses itself is through the boom and the bam. Okay. She's all talking about the boom and the bam. So, constant bombs and things. And she said, I've learned to see beyond that. And yes, we have the boom and the bam, but I also really feel that the change is coming. And I was in the Middle East last year, just under a year ago. And, she was talking about things and she said, it's just not quite time. And she was saying about certain leaders, she said, everybody in our country, all of us, we think this person's a real asshole. And she said, but it's not done its course. We just have to wait. Okay. So I want to say that, something that's really rising is the sense of the oneness. And this was referred to in these posts. And this is something that we've also been investigating in our Saints and Seers and Sages immersion. And we're coming to the finale of that, which happens to be on International Women's Day this year. And it doesn't really matter when you're listening to this or watching this, because the theme is something we hope is going to be a keeper. And it's not rocket science. I think it's what we're all here for. Okay. Probably those of you listening. And one of our team was saying that she'd had this kind of discussion that became kind of really cumbersome when in Indonesia a few days ago because it was all done through like Google Translate on the phone, and people were all like, "So what religion are you?" And this thing that I was also experiencing when I was in the Ganga, like my landlord, who's a Brahmin priest, his guru decided that he should be my guru. And nobody checks in to see what my spirituality is. And there has been a popularizing over recent times of this term called spiritual but not religious. Okay, which is, I think, what a lot of us are. But what's really kind of icky is that it's developed its own kind of academic acronym, which is SBNR. And I do not want to be called an SBNR. It's like I've spoken up with lots of groups who would be seen as gay or homosexual over the years and said, I really think a lot of the terminologies used to describe your demographic, your culture, your gender preference are really derogatory and are not really bringing you into your full divinity. And I don't want to be an SBNR, okay? And Madalena was saying, it sounds like espionage, but espionage is cooler. So, this is the thing. What can we be? As we come in, I think so many of us have come into our body knowing that a lot of organized systems create suffering, okay, or perpetuated or are not so suited to the way we're evolving. And I'm also going to use a term that I've been pondering on this in recent days. I have a student who does a lot of work in the Alps, and she says she's rich people adjacent. And she's actually very lucky because often people will stay in chalets that she lets out, and she gets loads of nice stuff. So she said, I'm rich people adjacent. I'm not one of the rich people, but they kind of give me things. And I, live in harmony with it, and I'm part of that ecosystem, but I'm not in it. And I'm kind of religious people adjacent, okay? I have so much respect for religious people, their connection to and devotion to God, the one, okay? But I am getting really bored of people thinking that we're these crappy infidels and these lowly people because we actually have this ineffable devotion to the divine, to the one, to the all. And we go beyond even wanting to fight people about it because we've got deep conviction and deep faith. And I feel that this is something that we've been journeying collectively and clearing the shards of. So many of us have had ancestral wounding around being, you are subordinate little minion and you must pray to the priest because you're too lowly, too sinful. And all of this, and we're clearing that collectively. And actually, these are all things that serve to separate us from the actual divine. Okay. And a lot of us know we have this faith, this conviction, but we don't identify as this or that. And this or that is the problem, okay? This or that. I grew up in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. And this is where the problems are lying. And actually, from a very young age, I was asking about peace and, starting to work in these communities where people are working together. There's not one leader, and you're looking for this oneness. So we're going to be having some interviews with people who are looking quite deeply at the SBNR thing. And I'm really putting this to all of you. I do feel that there's time for a global non-religion of, I don't know, is it called I'm a onesie. This was what I was saying to somebody yesterday. It's like, I know it's kind of like, it's a joke, but if I'm into oneness, am I a onesie? Because those are those like funny little uniforms that people sometimes wear, like where, if you have to go to the toilet, you have to take it off all in one, or like kids wear them, babies. But, I think the cheeky word is like we're onesies, okay? But I do not pertain to owning the terminology of what we are, okay? But I know I don't want to be an SBNR, okay, with these dots between the what is that letter? So I'm putting it to you as we evolve with this channel to understand this is what we are really looking at is this more inclusive form of spirituality um, that that doesn't put us in the corner, shunned as the ignoble, terrible, sinful ones, because actually we've got a really deep moral compass and we probably were monks and nuns in past lives, but we've come here to help to unify something. And I've had quite a lot of experience with denominations that call themselves non-sectarian, but at the end of the day, their portrayal of everything is still very cultural and caught within one cultural paradigm. And when we want to talk about absolutism in spirituality, we're really going to the oneness. And it goes beyond skin color, class, all of these things, gender preference. And right now, so many people feel very excluded and marginalized for what people speak for in the name of God because they can see that is actually perpetuating separation. And so many of us came into our bodies knowing we didn't sign up for that, and yet we get shunned in the corner for actually having faith, And that's really silly, okay? Because there is something rising. And this is another paradox that we have to overcome. Is like I really honor lineage, okay? I really honor it. And I honor wisdom keepers. And if anybody studies, they'll see I've spent a long time in service to elders and wisdom keepers. And I will remain very, very devout to my elders. But we also have come where we have to just also understand that our communities need to be preserved. And what I see a lot of in a lot of these organized religious settings is that there's so much just abandon of the actual group field and inclusion that actually you get these really top heavy, unstable, uninclusive organizations. And when you try to talk to people, this is something that's up in the field right now. I've been watching and listening to several podcasts by people who've been part of very important lineages and monks who are all saying, the minute I started to talk about where are the people of color, I got stonewalled. Okay. And I have had similar experiences. Like it's called our limitations if we speak up about it, right? And this is, I think, a role of what we might call the feminine principle, which is not women. It's not being a woman. It's about a lot of the time a matriarch's holding the community. She's doing the cooking. She's making sure little Tommy, whose mom went away, that he comes into the kitchen too and gets a bit of food. And I think this is what we all need to work with. This is, of course, people all talk about the rise of the feminine nature, the feminine principle. And with total reverence and respect to these unbroken lineages and to the wisdom keepers, there needs to be something that's beyond this derogatory shunning of the oneness and being a onesie, okay? And I think that this can only take place if we start to have confidence in our group fields, start to work together, and start to develop the descriptions, the terminologies that because often I know that a lot of you will have experienced this is when we're in certain settings or we're a certain age or we're going through certain karma in our astrology, sometimes we're tongue-tied. And then when we're with certain people, things come out all wrong. If we don't have a word for what we are, or we do not resuscitate espionage, whatever they call it, this espionage, it's like DNR, DNI. Don't, how can we, with conviction, hold the space that we have been ordained in this life to do because we came in to do this? And not to feel lowly because we incarnated in the West with this more horizontal diversification, how to also keep working with the ego, but to do it in the ways that also are coming through for our cultural perspective. And to understand that what I see a lot of is, for instance, tribes will say, you poor white people, and yes, it's colonization and westernization have a lot of issues, but actually we've come here. This is the Rainbow Tribe prophecy. We've come here to bring these together, to bridge all of these things. And so if we don't even know how to describe ourselves and to look at the common ethos of why we're really here, how can we ever represent that and do our job properly? Because if you don't create that space of self-knowing and gnosis of what you are, and of course that can change, but if you don't turn up to a meeting, you're gonna be the shitty little one in the corner, okay? And so I'm really calling forth that we have more confidence in this role that's coming through. And this is the time where this is rising. We can see this in astrology. And unfortunately, we see a lot of outing of where these top heavy institutions or cults or gurus or whatever or shamans have misused their power. But that's often because the societal community structures around them didn't have enough of the horizontal and the telepathic. So I think that it's something that we need to do. And this is where this concept of the multi-directional human, as part of our spiritual evolution, we have to have energy flow that's not just moving this way, okay? That's not like toroidal fields, it's not biomimicry. It's really, really very important that we understand the energetics of it, because this is actually what I've noticed from doing certain spiritual practices is that some that come from these more top-down lineages, the energies just really stay like this. And I noticed that people don't know actually how to interact with each other. So how can they create forward motion within their own community if everything's just got the gaze to one direction, okay? And that's that's okay in some settings. But actually, if we really want to create a golden age, a new earth, we have to create the spaces for that. And this is where we come to this concept of hard to reach people. And I've spent years working with hard to reach people, and it is really slow, and they are really hard to reach. And it's a labor of love. And I don't always do it, but we're probably going to go back into doing more of that. And we need to come together and understand that people have things like racialized trauma, certain barriers, that certain ways of learning in their culture that we shouldn't just dominate with our colonial mindset. And it takes time to start to understand how somebody might be looking at something, how their culture flows with something, and to come in without an agenda takes actual time to sit with people, to actually listen with true interested nature, and to find common ground and to not push it. Okay, it's back to the elegant flow. So this is again something that if we really want to step forward with being onesies, sometimes what's actually required is slowing down. Because to understand the human condition takes a lot of listening and observing. And we come back to permaculture, the first laws of permaculture, mapping and observation. So I believe that this is a time that we need to really step into as onesies. And I'm not trying to say that we should stick with the word onesie. And maybe there's groups out there who've already found a really, really impeccable cross-cultural term for what we are, okay? And this is our call to action, at this time. I'm not saying I'm making it. I'm saying I think so many of us are feeling this. And I'm so excited about this co-inquiry that may take time, okay? But it's okay. But we need to have those discussions and not just be the heathen ones in the corner when we've actually got a total connection to our landscape. We receive messages and we're in rapture with the divine in every living moment, okay? And not to be like, oh, look at you because you didn't get ordained in this order and do all these things as Guru said, you're a lowly one. And this arrogance that comes across that's really starting to wear thin because it comes across almost like narcissism. And the thing is that actually, I don't believe any of this is true narcissism. I believe it's just naivety, okay? Because so many things are from the lens of certain closed cultural or religious groups. And it's a bit like politics, like how many prime ministers or presidents have ever been to a housing estate in a country, spent the night on the streets, is very similar with a lot of religions. They haven't, they come in with this kind of pious power, like, hello, poor lowly one. Oh, how are you? But there's no real meeting with people. And this is where some of these frontline people who hold their spirituality are so, so important. The ones who really getting low down with the human condition. So let's see where we go with this. What I do want to say is that we will be resuming to some degree some sort of pro-social activities. We always do stuff. It's not our most prominent wing because again, it takes years to get that to be safe. I've spent many years working in those fields, but please get in touch. We do want to have a whole wing devoted to that with what we do. And so not just these kind of biannually, I should say, activities. But yeah, let's find out who we are first, okay? And so if you would like to take part in these discussions of what is it to be tapping into this oneness that's beyond this kind of new age fluff that's very egoic, where you really feel like you feel most most in your being when you are working with a group field, when you are lapsing into that oneness, where it is in this mimicry of what's happening with crypto and blockchain and all of these things. It's this hive mind, this mycelial way of operating. So this is a lot of us. Our job is to come and make the grid the horizontal grid. And I want to say, I don't think anybody's stopping us. This is another thing that I've noticed. Yes, I've seen naivety when having to have this discussion with religious leaders, but I don't sense any malevolence with them with this discussion. And I think, and I know that they really respect women, that they're not sexist. I just think they have limitations in what they can do because they've got their job already to hold their lineage. And I think that energetically they're egging us on to just go and do the thing, okay? So let's do the thing. The portal is open. We just need to not be these I see. I can't even, my mind doesn't even want to remember it. Okay. And that's not a good thing either. Okay. So let's not be just an acronym. Okay. Where is the divinity in that? Okay. Let's really ascend into something that really, really shows what we're here to tap into and to emanate. Okay. So let's start weaving, everybody. It's really exciting times. And yeah, do comment if you like and get in touch with our school and there are many nodes who I believe are all coming together to do this, so let's start mapping, observing and weaving. Gracias, gracias, gracias.